Mira, ahora sí, no, es que ahora está en mute. Ahora sí, ¿no? Sí. Creo que ahora sí.
Vaya red.
¿Ya está?
¿PowerPoint o algo así?
Sí, sí, PowerPoint. Okay. So, hello everybody, welcome back after the lunch. And I think we have heard a lot of people talking about their experience, and not their experience, just their path they took. In my case, I wanted to talk about my experience, and I want everybody to understand that what I did, it was within a context. And this is very important because you will see that some of the things I did because I was in a particular setting, in a particular context. But I'm sure you can take some take-home messages for yourself. So I don't know if you're familiar with these PhD comics. They're very funny and also very realistic, unfortunately. But you can see that this is you probably many times, especially those who are here right now. And what I wanted to take from this, and the way I want to start, is something that the people already said. Don't wait until you're done with your PhD to start wondering what do you want to do later. And I think this is something we can repeat until we're done. But it's very important to keep this in mind, because once you finish your PhD, it won't be too late, but if you do it early, it's definitely much better. Also very important, start harnessing your knowledge and skills, because when you go outside, and a lot of people talk about these interpersonal skills, communication skills, and all these skills that you think you lack, it's actually not true. You have them, it's just that you haven't really matured them or nurtured them enough. So I think, say it again? Oh. I think somebody said that you could have a plan or you could not have a plan, and it's true that sometimes you just take things as they come. But I think it's important to have a little bit of a plan. And the plan doesn't mean I have to do this, this, and that, but I think it's important that you have at least certain elements and ingredients in your plan. And again, I think somebody already mentioned the importance of having a mentor. Mentors, mentorship. And you will see that it's not, or it doesn't have to be your PhD advisor. It doesn't have to be somebody you know well. You have to identify a good mentor depending on what you want to do. And it's not easy, but if you're proactive, you can find it. Talk to people, network. This is super, super important, because when it comes to jobs and to finding jobs, I think in my experience, the main ingredient is that you know somebody. Not because that person is going to give you a job, and actually that's a very bad approach. Meeting somebody and like, oh, hello, do you have a job for me? That's definitely not the way to go. It's not the way to go. I did it a few times. It's not the way to go. But you get to know people, and you get to get somebody, and then maybe you know another person, and that's how you grow your network. Now think outside the box, and I think you're already thinking outside the box, because some of you are here because you want to go to the big circle where the magic happens. And I think we have seen a lot of examples that have, I think, brightened the future for many of you and give you hope that you can have different jobs outside that you might be very happy with. So as I said, this is my personal and professional journey. And this is how I started. I did pharmacy in the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, in Spain, of course. And then what happened is that I moved forward. I started finding a catalyst, and I call it a catalyst because in my case, when I was about to finish my degree, I found these summer training programs. I put here the example of the CNIO because I have them, and I'm a big defender of this program. In my case, it was with the Instituto Salud Carlos III. And what I learned was not to hold a pipette, because that I did a little bit. I knew a little bit from pharmacy. But what I met is people that could open my eyes and say, listen, I went to Glasgow to do my postdoc, and I went to NYU in New York, which is where I finally ended. And I met people who went went to places. I never went outside Spain. So these people went to places, and they encouraged me to do something with my life, and my life was heading towards at least trying to go outside. How did I do it? Well, of course, I found another catalyst, which is funding, which is very important if you want to go somewhere else. Back in 2003, when I did it, it was kind of scarce. So it was the La Caixa Foundation and then the Fulbright Fellowships. But I was very lucky, and I got the Caixa Foundation, and I went to the US where I got my PhD at NYU. And this is what I mentioned, like the context. My context was New York, which apart from being a lot of fun, you can find plenty of opportunities for a PhD outside academia. And you will see that my path is like that because I was there. So mentor, in my case, my PhD advisor, Bob Schneider, was a fantastic mentor. And I think I was commenting this during lunch with some people. And it's that this person gave me a lot of leeway to do many things that could complement what I wanted to do, because I was like really trying to get to my question mark. And it's a question mark because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did know that I didn't want to do my postdoc, but I didn't know what I wanted to do next. So this person allowed me to do many things. And I'm sure that sometimes you go to places and people say, maybe you should do an MBA. Have you heard that before? Because in my case, I did all the time. And you know what? I have no money. I'm already finishing a 5-6-year degree. I don't want to go back to another 2-year MBA. Please, is it really necessary? Well, sometimes it is, and sometimes it is. So what I found is working groups within my PhD student, friends, to do many things. So I started using this book, The Case in Point. I don't know if many of you know it. If you want to go into consulting, it's a very useful group. And I started working with my colleagues, trying to get a sense of if I do an interview in consulting, what do I need to do? Company events, again, this was in consulting because I think these companies try to do this, try to recruit people by doing company events, and you can go sort of what they do here, but in very big events. So what I encourage you is try to talk, of course this is very hopeful, but try to talk to your university, because it's the university the ones that organizes this, and try to recruit or find a company that can come for recruiting as students, and it's very useful. And of course, the networking. And I put here 2 things. The Dropout Club, which I don't know if many of you know this Dropout Club. They have actually a chapter in Spain. This Dropout Club was founded in, I think it's 2000, by physicians who wanted to do something else beyond the clinic. And then obviously PhD joined in because they didn't want to do a postdoc. And it's a place where you find job postings, et cetera. And this is exactly what you do. You go to a bar, and you have beers, and you try to network with people, and that's where you make the mistake of can I have a job? And they're like, no, but we're here to network, and that's what you need to get. And I put LinkedIn, because if you're really trying to get into industry, whatever field that is, it's very important that you have a LinkedIn field, because your CV, when you hand it to a company, that's exactly what your LinkedIn is. And more, I know that human resources use LinkedIn to find candidates. So if you have a LinkedIn account, hopefully all of you have, and if not, I encourage you to do it well, and keep it active. Because there's nothing worse than having a LinkedIn account to a CV that is totally outdated, because it tells a lot, negatively speaking. So the action point here, obviously, is have a professional resume. I think you're going to have a workshop for that, so that's very important, and business cards. So keep networking, very important. Career fairs, I think you're already doing that by coming here. In my case, there was this thing called What Can You Be with a PhD that started at NYU in maybe 2006. And it was really successful to the point that they do it every year now, and all the big universities, and also, I think, universities and hospitals in the New York area go. And they do this huge fair where they have all these companies similar to what is outside, but many. Of course, it's the context of what it is. But I think it was very useful to see examples like the ones you see today. And of course, the one you're here. Internships, I put this because it's something I did. And again, it was in the context of having a mentor who allowed me to do many things. My mentor was a successful investigator, but was also an entrepreneur. He did a couple of spin-offs. He was consulting at a company. Now he's the dean of the Office of Therapeutics Alliance at NYU. It was a guy with a super broad scope of what you could do with your life. And he was able to transmit this to people, and that was it was very important. So when I wanted to learn more about tech transfer, just to see if this is where I should head to, he allowed me to do it. I don't know how easy it is to do it in certain universities, but you have to find a way inside these places. And then the courses. I said that doing an MBA is, maybe it's not the way to go for everybody, but there are like courses in between that can give you a little taste of what you could do with your life. In my case, I did this course called The Fundamentals of the Bioscience Industry, and it was very good. It was sort of short. It was like 6 months span, going twice a week, but it was very good to understand what you could do with your life. And I mentioned that because it was with this course that I started narrowing down what I wanted to do. And then I learned I don't want to do consulting. I don't want to go into business, just business. But this area about scientific publishing, it kind of looks very interesting. So what can I do in that regard? So I started going to things that were more focused to that. And what that meant is that there were events where I could find editors talking about their lives. And I was also able to get some courage and do some interviews as well, even though they reject me, but this is how you learn as well. So I got lucky that in New York, you have the Nature offices in the UK and New York. So I was able to get a position as editor of Nature Medicine. And Juan Carlos Lopez, back in the day, was the chief editor of this journal, and again was another person that became a mentor in my life because he allowed me to grow, not only as an editor, but as professionally speaking, he allowed me to grow and find and open many doors that brought me to different places. So if you want to know what is to be an editor, I don't think I have time to go in detail, and I can ask any questions, but these are general questions that whether the outcome is to be an editor or not, these are things that you need to ask yourself when you're trying to head somewhere. What do I need to be, an editor or something else? Is this the job for me? Will I use my scientific background? For me, it was very important because I really love science. I still do. I just didn't want to do it, but I like reading about it. I would like to do that. How do I get an interview? It's very important as well. Will this open any doors? This is very, very, very important because you don't want to be in a job that is going to be kind of like capped quickly. You want to have that projection, or at least I think it's important to have that projection. What can I learn? Because this is a continuous training. And what will my day-to-day life look like? That is a little bit more tricky. I mean, you can talk to people and they will be like, oh, on a daily basis, I do this, I do that. So that you have to talk. It's harder to identify exactly what you were doing. But what you can get, at least what I did get, hopefully all of it, it's many things that you could apply to be an editor, but you could apply also to be something else, to be creative, to be critical, receive criticism, broad understanding of science. Somebody was talking about this big circle and then your tiny little impact in life with your PhD. Well, what I got, it was a very broad understanding of science that you can apply in many settings. International environment, and because that's not something you learn in a book, it's something you learn with life, to deal with international people, different cultures, etc. Creative, constructive, organized thinking, very important as well if you go to certain managerial jobs. Decision making, especially you're trying to go up. When you get to a point where you have to make decisions, you have to really learn how to make those decisions and deal with bad decisions, good decisions, etc. Public keeping, communications, of course, the multidisciplinary skills, and networks in many places. And that's also very important because you not only have your network from academia, now you have industry, you have foundations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're really growing. And where do I go from there? Well, you can go to many places. I said that you can open your network a lot. In my case, I continue evolving and adapting. So what happened is that 12 years later in the US, I decided to go back to Spain. Based on personal and professional reasons, but it was more personal at the time. So what happened is that I went back to Spain, to Madrid, where I'm from originally, and what happened is that there's no nature in Madrid. There's like Springer Nature, and they do something related to editorial content, but more oriented to marketing for pharmaceutical companies, and I did that for a month, and I didn't like it. And during that month, somebody looked for me. Somebody looked from PharmaMar. I don't know if you're familiar with this company. They work on oncology drugs, inspiring in the ocean. And they were looking for a director of corporate and science communications. And since I wasn't very happy doing that marketing thing at the Nature office in Madrid, I decided, you know what, this is a good stepping stone, because now I could learn from industry. And it was a very high-rank position, which means that I had I had access to all these different departments. So I have a very broad view of what a company, a multinational company, does from a regulatory standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, from direction, like many. So I did that for a year, and then I switched industries from publishing to biopharma. But what happened is that I wasn't happy, because being the director of corporate and science communications, in this case, unfortunately, it focused most on corporate, and I was really like leaving science behind, too behind for my liking. So I found another mentor in the way. I found Marta Piñero Núñez, which is originally from Spain, from Galicia, but she's been in the States for, I don't know how long, forever, 20 years. She works in the Open Innovation Drug Discovery Unit of Lilly in Indiana. And when I meant that you had to find a mentor, you don't have to have your mentor next door. She lives in Indiana, she doesn't know me at all, but I reached out to her in LinkedIn because I knew that she could understand me, because one thing that happened to me is I had a cultural shock when I came back after 12 years outside. It was very, very big, in a bad and a good way. It was a cultural shock. And I knew that I had to reach out to somebody who could understand where I am right now, and where I come from, and where I would like to go. And she was super accessible. Like, I contacted through LinkedIn, and being in the US for many, many years, she told me, like, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I could be your mentor. She just said that out straight. I didn't even ask, can you be my mentor? Because nobody asked that. But she said that, like, it's good that you come to me, because I have my experience, I have some contacts, I can try to give you advice, feedback, etc. And of course, it's up to you what you do with it. But she was a very important person in my life at that point. So what happened is that I decided to move on with my life. But you have to understand that even if at the point you could say, oh, well, it's the wrong decision to go to the biopharma industry, it was not. It was not, because I came to Spain after 12 years. And unfortunately, one thing I could change now is keep more ties with your country. If you leave, try to keep your network alive here, because if you have the idea of coming back in the future, you're going to need that network again, because things change a lot, and you could be an outsider, and that's hard. So in my case, I was able to grow a new network and friends in Spain, which was foreign to me, both in research and industry. You can also, what I got, lessons from pharma and innovation, both needs and culture, and that has been very useful for the future. And a deeper knowledge of the corporate and business world, especially if you're going to go to the other side. But what I wanted to do is get closer to academia, but from a non-academic standpoint. So I wanted to return to science, to a more science-oriented environment. And what I did, using my contacts from when I was an editor, I got to the CNIO institution. I reached out to the director again, and I said, listen, I would like to do this. I think I can contribute with this, and it's up to you how you sell yourself. And obviously, I was going to a person who knew me from the past, so it's everything together. I'm almost done. So now at the CNIO, I'm Director of International Affairs. That's why, like, if people ask me, like, what do you do to get Director of International Affairs? And I will be very quick about what I do. It's not so easy. I don't think you train in, like, oh, I'm going to be the Director of International Affairs at a scientific institution. Like, that's hard to get. But sometimes you find your way in. I mean, for me, I'm not going to say it was easy, because it was a lot of work, and I have to move everywhere, and I have to put many, many hours outside the laboratory. But I was lucky in the sense that you also have to add a factor of luck to get where I am right now. Now, as Director of International Affairs, it's a non-academic post, because obviously I'm not a researcher, but I do many things that I find very interesting. One is that I'm in close with science, because I'm still in contact with the investigators, because I basically support them in doing international calls for scientific projects, institutional programs that are international, I support and I even manage. I also support the direction of innovation when they want to reach out to industry, because I have certain knowledge about how to reach out to these people and establish these relationships. And also, things like training in the international environment, I also help out with that. So it's actually a very fun job, because I could not tell you what I do on a daily basis, because it changes. It has its downsides too, in other things, but it's a very exciting job, and I'm happy here. And that's why I put finding your groove, because sometimes you have to go through different things until you get there. And that's it. This is what I have to tell you about my life, and hopefully you get some interesting messages that you can apply to your own situation. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Carolina. Y tenemos la necesidad de que hagáis algunas preguntas porque hay que reiniciar el equipo. Así que, ¿hay alguien valiente para hacer la primera pregunta que rompa el hielo de esta tarde? Ahí. La Universidad Autónoma de Madrid.
Buenas.
Hola.
Has dicho previamente que ya trabajaste en el CENIO con la beca de la del Summer Internship. ¿Te sirvió el hecho de haber tenido ya previamente un contacto con el centro para finalmente trabajar aquí, en el CENIO?
No. De hecho, mi Summer Training Program no fue en el CENIO. He puesto el ejemplo porque en el CENIO la tenemos y yo, cada vez que la gente habla de ella, yo digo, no, es muy importante. O sea, para mí fue la manera de encontrar gente que me orientó a la hora de decir, oye, chica, pues si quieres hacer doctorado, pues vete fuera, busca una beca, te ayudamos y tal y cual. No, la mía fue en el Instituto de Salud Carlos III. Estuve en el departamento de parasitología, que no tuvo nada que ver. Alguien habla de leishmania, yo estuve con leishmania y malaria, y luego mi PhD fue en la biología del cáncer, en el tema del tumor microenvironment. O sea, que no tuvo nada que ver. Aquella Summer Internship fue interesante porque, por ejemplo, en mi caso, mi familia no viene del mundo de la ciencia, de hecho soy la primera licenciada de la familia, con lo cual no tuve ningún apoyo familiar, por así decirlo, en la universidad tampoco lo encontré o no me lo busqué bien en su día, alguien que me pudiese orientar y yo iba más perdida que un burro en un garaje. Entonces allí es donde llegué y me encontré con gente que estaba haciendo la tesis, gente que había hecho un postdoc, algunos dentro, algunos fuera, y eso es lo que realmente te da una visión de decir, oye, pues a lo mejor lo que tengo que hacer es ponerme las pilas, buscar mi financiación y oye, intentarlo por lo menos. Y esa fue la primera...
Y cuando estabas en Estados Unidos, mientras estás haciendo la tesis, ¿qué pasa para que tú digas, bueno, pues existen otras posibilidades, ¿no? Porque estando en España lo puedo entender por una cuestión cultural, pero cuando te vas a Estados Unidos, que no es tu país, tampoco es tu lengua nativa, ¿cómo te sientes, ¿no? ¿Cómo abordas? Porque no solamente es la cuestión profesional, sino también se te mezclan otras, bueno, a mí me pasaría, ¿no? Unas cuestiones más sentimentales y viscerales.
Claro. Bueno, yo es que me fui muy joven, me fui con 23 años a hacer la tesis. Entonces llegué y la verdad es que los amigos que me hice fueron amigos extranjeros, no me hice amigos españoles. Y en mi caso particular lo que tenía muy claro es que no quería hacer un postdoc. Entonces a los 2 años más o menos de tesis empecé a mirar posibilidades. Y entonces las posibilidades es que la verdad es que a lo mejor en NYU yo tuve suerte porque en NYU te presentaban incluso de entrada, oye, hay esta posibilidad, o a lo mejor había muchos anuncios, el What can you be with your PhD, yo lo tuve desde 2 años de tesis, empecé a ver, oye, pues la gente hace esto, hace Medical Communications, hace Scientific Communications, han hecho un MBA y ahora hacen esto, están en Pharma, Medical Science Liaisons, no sé qué, Scientific Publishing, Scientific Editors, te venían por todas partes, traían alumni que hablaba de lo que ellos eran ahora, entonces yo creo que ahí en su día y ahora más, había una visión mucho más amplia de lo que podías hacer. En el contexto, otra vez digo, que yo tenía un jefe de laboratorio, que un tío fantástico, y que no solamente me apoyaba, sino que me guiaba, ¿no? En plan, chica, si tú no quieres hacer esto, también está esto y esto, pero te tienes que mover tú. El tema es que yo me moví, empecé a hacer working groups con mis amigos, empecé a mirar, oye, vi este curso y este otro, no tengo financiación, bueno, ya me busco la vida, y así es, o sea, que tienes que levantar y ponerte tú a buscar las cosas, porque si estás esperando a que te lleguen es difícil. Es complicado cuando estás en un país que no es ni tu idioma ni tu cultura, pero al final te adaptas tanto que cuando vuelves a España no encajas.
Yo te quería preguntar precisamente por eso, ¿cómo has superado las dificultades de trabajar en comunicación en un idioma que no es el tuyo? Porque eso cuesta, o sea, trabajar en ciencia con el inglés, aunque no lo hables perfectamente, pues bueno, no pasa nada. Pero ya cuando trabajas en comunicación y tienes que, sobre todo, escribir, o sea, ¿te ha costado adaptarte, bueno, te ha costado aprender para...?
Claro. Entonces, he dicho, yo no había salido nunca de España, me fui allí sin saber mucho inglés. Casi no me dan la beca de la Caixa porque mi inglés era tan malo que casi no me la dan. O sea, ojo al dato. El tema es que cuando haces una tesis durante 5 años y medio, como lo hice yo, porque son un poco más largas, en inglés, aprendes o aprendes. Quiero decir, es que no te quedan más narices. Evidentemente, lo que yo hice fue intentar formarme. No fui a cursos, lo que estuve haciendo fue leer mucho, leer libros en inglés para conseguir vocabulario y una expresión de inglés que fuera, evidentemente, non-foreign. Y aún así, cuando entré de editora en Nature Medicine, me encontré como que, bueno, me tengo que poner todavía más las pilas, porque ahora soy una persona que está editando a una persona que habla en inglés. Evidentemente se nota cuando te viene un texto de un nativo y cuando no te viene uno que no es nativo. O te viene uno que es nativo, pero está escrito también terrible. O sea que ojo al dato también ahí. Tienes que poner las pilas y ya está. En mi experiencia es leer mucho. Leer artículos de newspapers, porque son muy difíciles y creo que te enseñan mucho, y leer muchos libros. Y así es como, y bueno, y luego práctica, claro. Pero por eso estás 12 años fuera. No tienes que estar 12, ¿eh?
Muchas
Estar
gracias,
menos.
Carolina.
Gracias.
Pues el problema se ha resuelto. Intenta cogerla después en el coffee break, ¿vale? A continuación tenemos a